If I were to ask you, how many hours have you spent today inside your mind, replaying the past or worrying about the future, what would your answer be? Most of us live not in the world around us, but in the constant noise within us. And yet, life doesn't happen in our thoughts. Life happens here, right now. Overthinking is something almost everyone struggles with, though most rarely notice it in the moment. It feels like we are being productive, like we are solving problems, analyzing situations, or preparing ourselves for what might come. But if we pause and truly examine it, overthinking is rarely productive. It is often nothing more than repetition. The same thoughts circle around again and again, sometimes in different words, but leading to the same anxiety or hesitation. It's like a record stuck in one groove, playing the same note over and over. You feel movement inside your head, but no progress in your life. To understand the nature of overthinking, picture a person running on a treadmill. The legs are moving, the heart is racing, sweat is dripping, but the scenery never changes. At the end of 30 minutes, the runner is in the exact same spot where they began. That is what overthinking does to the mind. It consumes energy, it feels intense, and it leaves you exhausted. But when you look around, you realize you've gone nowhere. The problem you started with is still unsolved, and now you're left with the weight of mental fatigue on top of it. What makes overthinking so deceptive is that it disguises itself as intelligence. You may believe, I'm just being careful, I'm preparing myself, I'm analyzing. But in reality, the same thought is being played on a loop, just dressed in new clothes. Imagine standing at a crossroads. Instead of taking one step forward to test the path, you remain frozen, drawing maps in your mind, playing out every possible route, worrying about getting lost, or imagining storms that may never come. Hours pass, maybe even days, and yet you are still standing at the same crossroad. Thought without action becomes a trap. Another way to see overthinking is like carrying a backpack full of rocks. Each rock is a small thought. What if this happens? What if I fail? What if they don't like me? What if I made the wrong choice? One rock is not heavy, but when you repeat those thoughts 100 times, the weight piles up. Soon you feel crushed, not because the world has placed such a heavy burden on you, but because you've chosen to carry the same small rocks over and over. The load is self-created. Overthinking is rarely about the outside world. It is a pattern we build inside ourselves. Even in simple, everyday moments, overthinking steals joy. Think about eating a meal. Instead of tasting the food, you may find yourself lost in thought, replaying an argument, worrying about tomorrow's meeting, or analyzing what someone might have meant by their words. The meal passes, but you hardly remember tasting it, or imagine lying in bed at night. The body is tired, craving rest, but the mind is restless, revisiting the same conversations, imagining the same fears. Hours pass, sleep slips away, and the cycle continues the next day. This is the true cost of overthinking. It robs us of the present moment. What's important to realize is that overthinking is not thinking more, it's thinking the same, but louder. True thinking leads to clarity, decisions, or solutions. Overthinking leads to stagnation. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. You feel like you're satisfying the need, but the more you drink, the more dehydrated you become. The same happens with thought. The more you overthink, the more you feel like you're getting closer to answers, but instead, the mind grows cloudier. Understanding this distinction, the difference between thought and overthinking, is the first step to freedom. Because once you can see the treadmill for what it is, you no longer confuse running in place with moving forward. The mind is one of the most powerful tools human beings possess. It allows us to imagine, to plan, to solve problems, and to create. Without the mind, there would be no art, no science, no progress. But a tool is only as useful as the way it is handled. If you pick up a hammer to build a house, it can create shelter. If you hold onto that same hammer all day, refusing to put it down, eventually, you'll only tire yourself out. The same principle applies to the mind. We are meant to use it when needed and set it aside when not. But too often, people don't just use the mind, they live inside it, and that is where the problems begin. Living inside the mind feels like being trapped in a never-ending house of mirrors. Each reflection is slightly distorted, slightly exaggerated, and before long, you lose touch with what is real. You don't see the world as it is. You see it only as your thoughts interpret it. Every conversation is replayed, every glance analyzed, every decision second-guessed. Instead of engaging with life directly, you experience it filtered through endless thought. Imagine going to the beach but never stepping on the sand or touching the water, only staring at photographs of the ocean. That is what it means to live in the mind. You experience life secondhand, always at a distance. On the other hand, using the mind is deliberate, it is purposeful. When a challenge appears, you invite the mind to help. When the challenge passes, you release it. For example, if you are planning a trip, you use your mind to book tickets, check maps, and arrange the schedule. Once that is complete, you put the planning aside and enjoy the journey. Living inside the mind, however, would mean worrying endlessly about the trip, imagining what could go wrong, replaying the decisions, and even when the journey begins, being so consumed by mental chatter that you forget to look out the window and see the scenery. Another way to understand the difference is to think of the mind as a flashlight. When used intentionally, it shines a beam of light exactly where you need it, illuminating the darkness so you can move forward. But if you leave the flashlight switched on, pointing in every direction, soon the batteries drain and the light becomes weak. That is what happens when we live inside the mind. Energy is wasted on unnecessary thought, on rehearsing conversations that may never happen, on replaying mistakes that cannot be undone. The beam of clarity becomes scattered, leaving us drained rather than empowered. It is also worth noting that living inside the mind often creates identity. We begin to mistake ourselves for our thoughts. If the mind says, "You are not good enough," we believe it. If the mind says, "They don't respect you," we accept it as truth. Yet these are only passing clouds, not permanent realities. Using the mind means recognizing thoughts as tools, temporary, helpful, and sometimes unhelpful. Living in the mind means building a home in those thoughts, decorating the walls with them, and calling them who you are. The difference between the two can determine whether you live a life of freedom or one of constant self-doubt. When you begin to see the mind for what it is, a powerful servant but a poor master, you start to reclaim balance. You understand that you are not required to live inside every thought that arises. You can observe it, use it if necessary, and let it go if not. This shift is subtle but life-changing, because once you stop living in the mind, you step back into the richness of life itself. You notice the sound of the wind, the taste of food, the warmth of connection with others. The world becomes vivid again, not because the world has changed, but because you are finally present in it. One of the deepest reasons people overthink is the desire for control. We want to know what's coming, how it will unfold, and whether we will be safe. The human mind craves certainty like the body craves food. But here lies the paradox. No matter how much we analyze, predict, or prepare, life always retains its mystery. Overthinking gives us the sensation of control, but it is an illusion, like holding sand in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Consider how often we imagine future conversations. You might rehearse what you will say to your boss, your partner, or a friend. You play it out in your head, word by word, as if writing a script. And yet, when the moment comes, it almost never unfolds as planned. The other person interrupts, responds differently, or brings up something unexpected. Suddenly, all those hours spent rehearsing feel wasted. This is the illusion of control at work. The mind believes it can shape the future by rehearsing it endlessly, but life refuses to follow the script. This illusion is powerful because it feels productive. If I think about all the risks, maybe I can prevent them. If I plan every detail, maybe nothing will go wrong. But the truth is, risk cannot be eliminated, only managed, and mistakes cannot be avoided, only learned from. Imagine trying to sail a boat. You can study the maps, prepare your sails, and set a clear course, but you cannot control the wind or the sea. The best sailor is not the one who predicts every wave, but the one who adapts as the waves arrive. Overthinking keeps you stuck at the shore, believing you can master the ocean before ever stepping into it. The illusion of control also steals from the present moment. Instead of enjoying dinner with your family, you might be thinking about tomorrow's presentation. Instead of appreciating a walk, you are busy worrying about an email that hasn't even been sent. You are living in the future, trying to manage what has not yet arrived. And ironically, when tomorrow comes, you may find yourself worrying about the next day. The cycle repeats endlessly, and life is postponed until later. But later never truly comes. What makes this even more challenging is that sometimes our thoughts do help us prepare. Planning has its place. Reflection has its purpose, but overthinking extends far beyond useful preparation. It convinces you that if you just think a little more, you can gain complete control. But life does not work that way. Illnesses arrive unannounced. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. People change their minds. The weather shifts without warning. The more you recognize this, the freer you become, because the truth is, peace doesn't come from controlling the storm. Peace comes from learning how to stand in the rain without fear. So the question becomes, if control is an illusion, what is real? What you can control is your attention, your actions, and your response to what unfolds. You cannot stop the storm, but you can choose whether to open an umbrella or dance in the rain. You cannot dictate how others will behave, but you can decide how you will show up in the interaction. You cannot guarantee success, but you can commit fully to the effort. This is the difference between chasing the illusion of control and embracing the reality of choice. When you stop trying to control everything, you free yourself to live with clarity, courage, and presence. The human mind has a unique ability that separates us from animals. We can travel in time without moving a single step. In an instant, we can replay a memory from 10 years ago or imagine a scenario 10 years ahead. This capacity is powerful. It allows us to learn from past mistakes and prepare for what's coming. But like any strength, when used without awareness, it becomes a burden. Too often, we don't just visit the past or the future, we live there. And carrying both at the same time makes the present unbearably heavy. Think of the past as a backpack. Every regret, every mistake, every unresolved memory is like a stone placed inside. A small stone doesn't weigh much, but over time, the backpack fills and the weight becomes harder to bear. Then imagine the future as another bag you're forced to carry in the other hand. Every what if, every worry about what might happen, every imagined failure adds another pound. Walking through life with both bags, the past strapped to your back and the future dragging from your hands, slows every step. You're still moving, but with a heaviness that drains your energy. And the tragedy is this: the present moment, which should feel light and alive, becomes suffocated under the weight of what was and what might be. The past is particularly tricky because it feels permanent. We replay moments, wishing we could change them, a harsh word spoken in anger, a choice that led to regret, a failure that still stings, but no amount of replay can rewrite history. The past exists only in memory, and memory itself is not even reliable. It's shaped by emotion, perspective, and time. Yet we carry these memories as if they were carved in stone. In truth, the past is not a prison unless we keep locking ourselves inside. The future, on the other hand, is seductive. It tempts us with the illusion of certainty. We imagine disasters, we prepare for rejections, we rehearse failures. And yet, how often does the future unfold exactly as we imagined? Rarely, most of the time, what we feared never happens, and what does happen is something we didn't expect. This is the strange irony. By living too much in the future, we miss the present, and when the future finally arrives, it feels hollow because we were too busy worrying about the next one. Life becomes a series of missed moments, each sacrificed to the one after it. What happens when we put down these weights, even for a moment? Suddenly, the present feels lighter. The sound of a bird outside the window, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the taste of food, these simple experiences return to life, and it's not because they weren't there before, it's because we were too distracted to notice. Living in the present doesn't mean forgetting the past or ignoring the future. It means not letting them steal today's breath. It means understanding that the past has already been lived and the future has not yet arrived. The only place life ever truly happens is here. The wisdom lies in balance. Use the past as a teacher, but don't carry it as a punishment. Use the future as a guide, but don't drag it as a chain. The present is not meant to bear the full weight of both. When you let go, when you set down the heavy bags, you find yourself standing taller, breathing easier, and moving more freely. You realize that life is not waiting somewhere behind you or ahead of you. It's unfolding right now, step by step, breath by breath, and the lighter you travel, the richer the journey becomes. It is one thing to understand overthinking, but another to step out of it. Awareness is the beginning, but action is what transforms awareness into change. The good news is that overthinking doesn't require extraordinary solutions. It requires small, practical practices that bring us back to the present moment. These practices don't erase thought, and they don't silence the mind forever. Instead, they shift our relationship with it, reminding us that we can live with the mind rather than trapped inside it. The first practice is breathing deeply. This may sound simple, but it is one of the most powerful tools available. When the mind races, the breath becomes shallow and quick. By pausing to take slow, deliberate breaths, you interrupt the cycle. It's like pressing a reset button for the nervous system. Inhale deeply, hold for a moment, and exhale slowly. Even 3 cycles of conscious breathing can anchor you in the body and calm the storm of thoughts. Breath is always with you. It requires no equipment, no preparation, only attention. It is the doorway back to the present. The second practice is grounding in sensations. Overthinking pulls us into abstract worlds, imagined conversations, hypothetical scenarios, endless possibilities. Grounding returns us to the reality of the body. Place your feet firmly on the floor. Notice the texture of the ground beneath them. Touch the surface of a table. Feel the temperature, the smoothness or roughness. Listen closely to the sounds around you, distant traffic, birds, even your own heartbeat. When you tune into sensations, the grip of thought loosens. You cannot fully obsess over imagined fears while deeply connected to physical reality. The body becomes an anchor against the drifting tides of thought. Another practical step is to ask one clear question instead of entertaining 100 vague ones. Overthinking thrives on loops of what-ifs. What if this happens? What if they react that way? What if I fail? Instead of drowning in these endless variations, stop and ask a single, direct question. What can I do right now? This question cuts through the fog. It shifts the focus from imagined futures to actionable choices. Often the answer is simple. Send the email, make the call, take a break. By narrowing thought into clarity, you transform overthinking into purposeful action. A fourth practice is to act on small steps. Overthinking paralyzes because it convinces you that the whole path must be clear before you take the first step. But life doesn't work that way. Clarity often comes from movement, not before it. Imagine standing at the foot of a staircase shrouded in fog. You can't see the top, but you can see the next step. Overthinking keeps you frozen, waiting for the fog to lift. Action means trusting that if you take one step, the next will reveal itself. This practice is not about eliminating fear, but about moving forward despite it. Lastly, recognize that these practices are not about escaping thought forever. The goal is not to silence the mind permanently. Such a thing is neither possible nor necessary. The mind will continue to produce thoughts, just as the heart continues to beat. But these practices remind you that you are not powerless. You can pause, you can choose, you can step back into the present. Each practice, whether breathing, grounding, questioning, or acting, is a reminder that the storm of overthinking is not the entirety of who you are. You are the one who can choose how to respond to it. The ultimate goal is not to destroy thought or silence the mind completely. That would be like asking the ocean to stop making waves. It's impossible, and it misunderstands the nature of the mind. The mind thinks just as the lungs breathe and the heart beats. Thoughts arise, flow, and dissolve. The challenge is not that the mind produces thoughts, but that we mistake ourselves for them. Living in the mind means drowning in its currents. Living with the mind means standing on the shore, watching the waves come and go, knowing you are not the ocean. You are the observer. Imagine sitting in a room with a television constantly running. If you live in the mind, you are glued to the screen, reacting emotionally to every scene, losing hours in the story. If you live with the mind, you know the television is on, but you also know you don't have to watch every channel. You can turn down the volume, you can change the program, or you can simply leave the room. The television exists, but it doesn't control your life. This shift in perspective is the difference between being consumed by thought and coexisting peacefully with it. Living with the mind also means accepting its chatter without judgment. Too often, people believe they must fight or suppress negative thoughts, but resisting them only makes them louder. Think of a child demanding attention. The more you push them away, the louder they cry. The mind works in the same way, by simply acknowledging thoughts. Yes, I see you, thank you. And then returning to the present, you break the cycle. Thoughts lose their power when they are noticed, but not obeyed. Living with the mind is not about domination, but about gentle cooperation. This approach also brings freedom in daily life. When you live with the mind, you don't need to wait for it to be quiet to act. You can take the next step even with doubts present. You can enjoy a conversation even with worries lingering in the background. You can sleep peacefully not because your mind is empty, but because you no longer believe every thought deserves your attention. Imagine walking through a busy market. Voices shout from every direction, but you don't stop at every stall. You choose where to look, what to buy, and what to ignore. That is what it means to live with the mind. You have choice. Another benefit of living with the mind is the return of presence. When you no longer cling to every thought, you open space for life itself. You notice the small details, the way the morning light filters through a window, the sound of laughter in a cafe, the way your own breath feels steady and calm. These moments don't require the mind's analysis, they require your attention. And when attention is freed from overthinking, the world regains its vividness. Life feels fuller not because more is happening, but because you are finally here to experience it. Ultimately, living with the mind is about shifting roles. You are not the prisoner of your thoughts, nor their victim. You are their companion. Sometimes they are helpful, sometimes they are noisy, sometimes they are misleading, but always they are just thoughts. When you see this clearly, overthinking loses its grip. You begin to walk lighter, act freer, and engage with life as it is, rather than as your mind insists it should be. This way of living does not mean abandoning the mind. It means walking alongside it, hand in hand, but never locked inside it. The mind is a remarkable gift, but it was never meant to be a cage. Overthinking is what happens when we mistake the chatter of thought for the truth of life. But you are more than your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. When you learn to use the mind without living inside it, you discover freedom, freedom to act without fear, to rest without regret, and to live without constantly rehearsing or replaying. The past has already passed. The future is not yet here, only this moment. The breath you are taking right now is real, so the invitation is simple. Stop overthinking. Step out of the endless corridors of the mind. Look around you. Listen, feel, live with your mind, not in it, because life is waiting, and it is happening now.